Previously. X-Rated, the X-Men Animated Review Show.
Hello and welcome to X-Rated, the X-Men Animated Review Show, X-Rated Evolution. We are your hosts, Devin and Andre, and this is another one of our exclusive interviews with special guests, Frank Paur and Stephen E. Gordon, directors of many things, animators of many things, but specifically X-Men Evolution. How are you guys doing tonight?
Great.
Doing well.
Good.
I can't think of two great first interviews we've had on since we started covering this series than you two. This is thanks for being on. This is awesome.
My pleasure.
Well, yeah. Well, we had the Leewalds on Eric and Julia at the beginning of our X-Men animated series review series, and I feel like they gave us a better foundation to watch the series on, and a bit of an insider track there, and just more context of what we were watching. I found. And no pressure, but I feel like we can probably get that here tonight.
You set the bar pretty high, Devin.
Optimistic.
Yeah, well, yeah. So we're early on in our review series of that show, so it'll be interesting to see how it all began.
Cool.
Yeah, well, thanks for being on, guys. I guess you want me to take a first shot?
Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are the impetus of this show? Like, what was the beginning of it? Because it's obviously such a wild tonal difference in X-Men 97 as far as the theme and the setting and the way the shows play out. Was that something the studio had in mind when they began this project, or is it like something you guys brought to the table?
Well, I'm sure Frank can weigh in, but essentially the Marvel, who was paying for the show, didn't care what we did, other than because at that point Marvel was a toy company.
Yeah,
pretty much exclusive. They were toy biz more than anything, and they were looking for ways to capitalize on the features that were coming out. It hadn't come out yet, but the Fox feature, and they wanted to find a way to extend their toy line, and so they came up with this basic idea, which initially we were afraid was going to be X-Men babies, and it wasn't, thankfully, but still, that was sort of the working thought. And a lot of the tone and feeling that was put into the show was by Boyd Kirkland. It was his show pretty much. I mean, anything that the pacing and the context and everything else was due to him.
The Marvel or the network. One of the things that I seem to recall is they really didn't want it to look like X-Men 97, though. Mm-hmm. They wanted a clear distinction between the two. And they didn't want it to look like Batman either because of Boyd and I. They were afraid that it would be too dark. It'd be, Warner's was trying to get away from trying to do more different things. But they're very clear that they didn't. They
definitely wanted a kid's show.
Costumes and
this was
all
supposed to be a young kid's show, absolutely.
Yeah.
We kind of pushed it, and Boyd pushed it, and we got more than just a kid's show out of it. But that was their initial thing.
Sounds like, and we heard the same thing from the Leewalds. Actually, it seems like that's something you have to really do in animation. Is kind of push away from the limitations they try and put on you. It being children's.
Well, start with what they want and then work towards what you want. It's kind of what it seems like, right? So obviously you gotta show success with what to be able to keep going to get to the level you want it to be.
Well, it's interesting because Steve had mentioned that it was very much Boyd Kirkland's show, and absolutely, and he was the guy that, I don't know if leading the charge is the right term, but he was the guy taking the flack for everyone. He brought in his creative team, and we had our meetings and our discussions the way things could go, and then we went our way. And he's the guy that kind of stood at the door and to keep out the banshees, basically. And he was very effective at doing that. He was an excellent producer and in dealing with executives, and he's a very creative guy, fantastic writer. So he knew how to deal with writers and such. But yeah, we and because of that, we're able to come up with some pretty interesting things. I think.
Yeah. Of course, in those days, it was much easier to keep the network at arm's distance because they didn't see animatics. I don't know if you guys are aware of how the process works, but in those days, we would do scripts and storyboards. And storyboards, the only way they would get the storyboards is they'd get a pile of storyboards, like 2 feet tall, and they'd have to go through them. They didn't even have digitized storyboards. They would get actual Xeroxes of storyboards, and they'd have to go through them. And invariably, that was an impossible task. So we were able to get a lot more stuff in there than you would normally do nowadays, because nowadays you take those storyboards and you turn them into an edited animatic, and then they watch that. And, in 20 minutes, it formed an opinion and can critique it. Now, in those days, that did not occur. So
everybody could send their stuff in on Friday, overwhelm the desk, and then everybody gets away with whatever they want.
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. We got a lot more stuff in there than you would normally be able to get into nowadays. Nowadays, they can scrub back and forth and say, well, wait a minute, this expression or this, we don't like the line read. And, it's a much more complicated issue nowadays working with the network than it was then. In some ways it's better now because we now know going in what we've got earlier too. But in those days, you didn't know what you had really until it came back in color from overseas.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and there was definitely some hit and miss there. I mean, with the X-Men TAS, they had to send episodes back and push them way later in the seasons and that sort of thing. Did you guys ever run into any kind of problems with that?
We had one particular episode, and I think it had more to do with the fact that it was Boyd's, baby, was the holiday episode, the Angel episode, which I think
on Angel's Wings.
Yeah, right. And we did not like a lot of what they were doing, so I ended up having to redraw a lot of the layouts, a lot of character acting on it and stuff. So it would happen occasionally, but we had better quality, to be blunt, overseas studios than they did on the X-Men show. The X-Men show had very kind of bottom of the barrel studios.
Yeah, we would call them the A team and the B team when we watched the show.
The C team.
In the C team.
I think our C team was their A team.
That's the first thing we said when we started watching this one. We're like, well, the animation's nice.
Well, also I think the fact that a lot of us were much more fluent in animation and stuff and knew what we could do. I mean, the character designs were much more friendly to animators, and storyboards we understood to a large degree. I think there was a lot of overreaching in the original X-Men show than what we were doing. We knew what we could accomplish and make it look good.
Well, yeah. Was there was it all when obviously they came to you and said just make an X-Men show? Was that all Boyd to say these are the characters we want to use?
No. There was actually an initial Bible written or premise pitched by a couple of guys that ended up not staying on the show very long.
The Skier and Eisenberg team.
Yeah. Bob Skier and Eisenberg. Yeah, they were not on it very long. But I think they kind of set sort of early parameters as to who the team was. And like I said, at that point, Marvel didn't really care one way or the other. So they kind of called the shots. I mean, there are a lot of things that they didn't do, obviously, because we didn't come into play until much later as we were making the actual show episodes, right, Frank?
Yeah.
So Boyd, it was more about tone that Boyd set. And the fact that we were doing a show about the personality arcs and characters and stuff, as opposed to who are they fighting this episode.
That goes back also to in setting the show up and them not really wanting us to do just a rehash of X-Men 97 because everybody has seen those done to death. We could have done them. We could have made it look a lot better, but they've already done those shows, and fans are very happy with them.
Yeah, they wanted something of their own. It's WB.
Because one of the parameters was set it up in school and younger characters, then we decided, well, let's look back to the roots of the X-Men, which was the oldie Kirby X-Men, which was they're in school, they're going to school, they have the black and yellow costumes, and it's all that teen angst. And and because of that, we said, well, they want us not just in the Xavier school, but they want us to be out in a regular high school environment as well, so they could have our characters interact more with like normal kids. And so that gave us a lot of story potential. I know at first the fans weren't quite happy about it, but we were trying to go with real character development and not just a lot of crazy action, which we did have, but that wasn't the priority of the show. It was all about the character interaction with each other.
Yeah. Well, the fun thing we noticed, I mean, we're just nearing the end of the first season, is the fun ways you kind of start to integrate other characters from the X-Men universe into this high school setting. Like to get Forge the way we get him is an interesting way, to have introduce him to the show, and it's kind of unique and different to the new world rules, which was very interesting, and must have been kind of fun to find new ways to inject old characters in this new setting.
That was a fun episode too.
Yeah. Well, was there much because as the show went on, I guess we're jumping all over the place, but as the show went on, like when the movie came out and had a mild level of success, like not mild, but like it was a big success, was there a lot of impetus to shift the show into the vibe of the show of the movies after that?
No, at that point we were what we were, and I mean, sort of the rule of thumb in the first season from Kids WB was we don't want to turn into soap opera. We ignored that for the most part.
Yeah.
And by the second season, we said, "Oh, this is great! Aren't we geniuses? Make it more soap opera."
Yeah.
They make sure all the female characters have lots of cool outfits to wear.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's the one thing you see difference from the TAS, where they always wear the same thing all the time. This one definitely, it seems like a little bit more of a lived-in world.
Well, it makes sense if they're trying to sell toys, because you can make various different versions of toys that all match the sort of different.
Well, unfortunately, the subtext or the underlying problem happened is that Toy Biz was struggling at that point because KB Toys, which was their main outlet, had just been bought up by a conglomerate and was being pirated and sold for parts. And so they had nowhere to put the toys. So I don't remember if it was at the end of the first season or into the second season where Marvel was like, we don't want the show anymore. We can't sell toys. We have no purpose for this show. We don't want them to keep making it. But they had a contract for 5 years.
The toys that they had were not very well made.
Well, but they were the typical X-Men toys of the day for the most part.
Didn't they want to do that the some kind of communicator thing that they had that didn't really work out? Somebody messed up on it.
Well, they had the ones that talk to one another. They had
like the X communicator. They just like.
Well, it was actually like a pen, and it had.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. They designed something, and they wanted to turn it into some like a. I don't know what it was, a walkie-talkie type.
Yeah,
something.
Interesting.
Yeah, didn't really work out well. No. It was a big snap on Marvel's part.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was the problem with that they were struggling toy-wise. They had their toys were, I think the toys from the movie didn't do very well, and then they were having trouble getting these toys into a store because I guess the way the toy business works is you would have an exclusive deal with KB Toys, or they would carry everything you did, or Toys R Us, but you couldn't go in if you had the exclusive with KB Toys. You couldn't Toys R Us would say, "Screw you, we're not interested."
Yeah.
At that point, Toys R Us was still viable, and KB Toys wasn't. So I think Marvel was struggling at that point. So until they actually turned into a real movie studio, but
Yeah.
our show was, I think, the last thing they actually paid for in that iteration of Marvel.
Oh,
After that, they stopped paying for anything.
yes.
It no longer became viable for them. The next show we did was Wolverine and the X-Men. They did not pay anything for that. They
Really?
licensed that entire thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, I was only asking because I noticed, like, obviously, eventually Wolverine's design shifts and he looks closer to the movie. So I figured there may have been some impetus into that.
That was mainly for toys. They wanted. There were like 3 outfits from Wolverine, I think, in the toys that they were. They said, "Gee, we need new kung fu outfit for Wolverine or something." So we found a way to incorporate that. I think second or third season we came up with that black outfit, which was sort of similar to the movies, but not necessarily. It was still,
okay. So they weren't informed by the other. That's interesting.
No, I mean early on they wouldn't let us see anything from the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was all NDA stuff.
Yeah.
But they would occasionally say, when we were working on like Sabretooth, they'd say, why don't you tie him put him in a trench coat like the movie? Like, can you show us? No, but he's in a trench coat. So I had to come up with something using a trench coat. I think the only thing they let us see was Professor X's wheelchair. They sent us an oversized toy prop of his wheelchair that we were to use that. Otherwise, all we knew were the actors that were in it, and obviously Patrick Stewart we leaned on. But other than that, everything was pretty much you guess.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, because we sort of just, like, obviously we're fans, so we've seen a lot of X-Men content in various forms, and we've kind of noticed, like, because the Sabretooth design sort of looks like the Ultimate X-Men design at the time in the comics. So I mean, it's like anything. There's so many different designs of these characters over the years that I'm sure you kind of, the new versions or mismatches of different things that work with whatever you need to get.
I mean, I think they did a little lifting from us, and we did a little lifting from them.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It just depends on what it was. I think at that point I don't think I'd seen a Ultimate Sabretooth. I think the only Ultimate stuff that was out there at the time was the Ultimate Avengers stuff. But I could be wrong.
To start with Spider-Man, and then I think X-Men, then Ultimates. But it was, I think the Ultimate X-Men comic started in 2001. So it's probably around the same time. So, but it's not like you had all the issues and whatever when it came out.
No, I mean, we had a liaison for Marvel that we utilized. It was Craig Carr, who eventually became one of the producers on the show.
Oh, cool.
And he would, anytime we'd need something, he'd try see what he could pull together and grab for us. But to try to keep up with the comics. I think, Frank, you were more of a comic collector than I was by a long shot. I hadn't seen comics, X-Men comics, since Kirby and Lee were doing them, frankly. So.
Well, that was going to be my next question, actually, was how familiar you guys were with X-Men going into this.
Oh,
not so much. Frank?
I was always a big X-Man fan growing up. So I knew all about it. I was very bummed out when they canceled the comic right after the Neil Adams run, which, by the way, is where everybody, X-Men the way it is now, and then it came back with Claremont and Byrne, they just took everything from Adams and Thomas and just ran with it. That's my opinion.
Very controversial.
But yeah,
look at the comments; they're going wild. No,
Greg and I would often have discussions, and later on, also when we were doing the MLG movies, that he and I would have discussions about Marvel, and a lot of those discussions about the characters wound up in the MCU, also, because they were just right downstairs from us. So they used those movies as kind of an introduction to lesser known characters. But for X-Men, again, we wanted to get that early feeling And one of the things that Boyd was a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, that's funny.
You
made that comparison a few times.
He has such a the Vampire Slayer was done so well about kids in high school and all the different things in that it was, we kind of took a cue from them, and even visually, as Steve can.
Even a couple direct screen grabs.
Well, I mean, even in the opening titles, I mean, when Rogue and I think Kitty turned to camera, that's Buffy and I can't think of the character's name, Charisma Carpenter's character or something, or Willow or something.
It was Faith. It was Faith and Buffy, I believe.
Yeah.
Faith,
Well, no, that was Faith and Buffy with the dance.
The dance.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was
the actual intro of the characters. Kitty Pryde, she turns to camera. That's a direct grab from the Buffy opening. And stuff.
Yeah, I can't think of Charisma Carpenter's character. She was on Angel.
Cordelia.
Yes.
Thank you. It was either her or it was Willow. I don't remember what, but there were a couple characters that we said, Boyd said, just use these shots. I want these shots in here because he wanted to do a subtext that this was girl empowerment and this was Buffy, the sort of the Buffyverse type of thinking on the X-Men as opposed to the X-Men universe. So
that's interesting because I'm pretty sure in our first episode of this review series, I said to Andre, I think somebody just went to pitch, hey, how about let's do X-Men and Buffy? Like, let's do Buffy X-Men.
That wasn't the intent. It was Boyd's intent. That was what he put into it once he was hired as the producer.
The tone kind of thing that you mentioned.
It's unique because it's not like it's not something you see as often. Like almost every iteration of the X-Men since in fiction has, like in animation or live action, it's always been like it's not really about the school environment. It's just about the superhero stuff, and so it was interesting to really hone in on the school environment and kind of play with that. And like every teenage kid feels othered, and I see how that could be exacerbated by being a mutant. So it's very interesting, especially like leading into, because I'm actually going into this fairly blind. I never watched a lot of the series as a kid because when it came out, I was in high school and didn't have as much time, I guess, for watching. And I also didn't have cable, so I didn't have access to it. But seeing like all these human characters, and I know a little bit about where the show's going and how they're going to play into it later, is very interesting. So I feel like maybe it wasn't the intent from the beginning, but the seeds were there to do something very interesting later. So. It was very cool. Awesome.
I wonder about the Spike character too, because I think I read something you mentioned on social media, Stephen, that when you guys created that character, you hadn't been familiar with Marrow, who has those powers.
No clue. I mean, we'd been told to do a character in Spike, and he may have been part of the Bible where he was the nephew of Storm and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I think the Bible had suggested he was an armadillo or something like that, and he'd roll up and that would be his power or something.
Interesting. That would have been quite a tonal shift.
So we worked for a long time trying to come up with what we could do with him, and then I don't remember where or how or who came up with the idea of the bone throwing or the spikes or whatever. Well, I think the spikes because his name was Spike. That was always a given, I believe. Or maybe it was. Maybe that came after. I don't remember.
I think it just came out of a discussion. We always used to. There was this fantastic little Chinese restaurant we used to go across the street from the studio. We all used to go to for lunch.
Yeah, and the Japanese one around the corner too.
Yeah, the Japanese around the corner. we would have a lot of discussions about creative discussions, and just share them. And some of these things made it in, some of them didn't. We got some of our funner episodes.
We broke a lot of episodes at those places. Yeah.
Well, even his powers are so kind of unique, and like shooting bone fragments that are it's kind of a gory horror-esque sort of thing. That's
it's also projected power. It's not just how can you give somebody a power that I can take care of that guy over there that's a distance away, and so the power, he's able to project, maybe not eye beams, but he's able to project projectiles, bone projectiles and such, and so that makes him more of an offensive threat. as opposed to people just getting up close and punching each other, which,
Yeah.
We couldn't do that very often. We had to be very tricky about it because of network standards.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
What
But-
were the limitations on that? Same as in like a few years
Oh,
earlier?
no
like
guns,
TAS?
no
Yeah.
hits to the head, all that type of thing. Very typical. It was Saturday morning. You got to remember too.
Mm.
And we had to follow a lot of standards and practices that were Saturday morning. If we had a gun, it had to shoot a laser. Couldn't shoot bullets, that type of thing. So cops were very weirdly
Futuristic.
armored.
Yeah.
Well, that was like that X-Men 97 and Spider-Man 2 from around that time period. It's like the cops all have like future space guns and they just shoot like laser
Yeah.
beams. Somehow just knock you out when they hit you. They don't slice through you like a laser beam would.
Yeah, I mean, we did our best to when we got standards and practices notes to not just whatever, we'll do whatever they tell us to do, but we worked our best to try to improve upon it and make it so it wasn't obvious we were just following notes like that. And made sure that it rose above that, and we came up with better thinking for it.
So with Spike, did they just want a brand new character that wasn't?
Yeah, I mean,
tied to any
it's for
comics?
diversity, whatnot, and obviously they didn't know Storm's backstory and whatnot, and I didn't either, and I'm not sure how many other. Frank, you may have, but she shouldn't have had a sister or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little loosely followed. I mean, we were being kind of loose with some of the histories.
Yeah,
I mean, there obviously was a Morrow in the comics. She wasn't very popular.
I'd never heard of her until
powers-
seasons later.
His
I'd
powers
never heard
came
of her.
out somewhat different than hers in a way,
Yeah.
similar but different.
Yeah.
But we
Frankly, we should have. If we'd known that she existed, that might have solved the problem because she's a black girl too, I believe, and that
She's
would have given
pink.
us
Like pink, yeah, I think she's
So I don't know.
but she may have been
she's
from a black
pink.
family, just came out pink with the mutant power. I'm not sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
maybe.
But either
I'm
way,
not sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
that if someone had known about her, that probably would have settled the concern.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
but-
Was Boyd a big fan of modern music? Because we had always noticed how the music in this show is very like electronic, rocky. Like it's kind of a very different sort of tone as well.
It's
Well,
a good. They're good.
we didn't
soundtrack.
have much of a budget for a
A full orchestra.
for an orchestra, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we had our composer, they would have their meetings, and he worked with what he had, which is his own system.
Yeah, it's very
But
John
I
Carpenter. It's
believe
like doing your own music.
He did compose each episode. He didn't keep reusing music like you see a lot in those types of
Oh, yeah.
shows.
No, it's
Each
unique.
episode has a
noticeable.
new score. Yeah,
It's good.
Yeah, it's very unique, and it's very like I guess knowing that Buffy had a big influence makes a lot of sense. It has a very like rocky, modern kind of Buffy-esque, but it's very John Carpenter in that like you save money by making your own music, so you just grab a synthesizer
Sure.
and go to town, right? Like this, which I thought was really unique. That's cool.
no, I think it was William Anderson. I think was
I think so.
the composer's name, but I think he did a very nice job of getting us through the seasons.
Well, again, music helped set the tone of the show
Yeah,
a great deal. So I think we were successful with that, and the music definitely added that extra punch to it, as music will always do.
Mhm.
And thank God it just wasn't the same music all the time, because
Yeah.
that could drive me crazy.
We did notice, I think it was in season or episode, I can't remember 5 or 6, that they do reuse the theme from the X-Men 97 in like just incidental music in the background or something. You can definitely tell it's the same. It's different, but it's inspired by it for sure. Which
As
is
long as
awesome.
they owned it, Marvel owned it, we could
Yeah.
use it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
and I think it might have been his
All
wink
these
at the
things,
camera.
just never
Wink
knew
at-
all the time.
So did you guys see, because X-Men TAS used up most, if not all, of the main comic book X-Men storylines. Did you guys see that as more of a blessing than a curse? Because it on first glance it might sound like a curse. It's like, well, what's left? What do we have left to tap from? But like, kind of
Then it's wide open.
Everybody turns into Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly.
Wolverine's claws. Turns into Galactus. Everybody.
Fox wanted to do 6 Phoenix Force movies.
I feel sorry for the writers of Marvel these days because, I mean, how often can they bring things, do something interesting?
Yeah.
And they have to go through a committee to do it.
Yeah.
We never had the committee to deal with.
Like I said, they left us alone. I think Marvel's biggest concern was the color of the uniforms.
Really?
And
they all have a unique color, I assume, to make them stand out.
They felt that each character had their own color palette, which, because originally we wanted to go with basically yellow and black for all the kids.
Yeah.
And then they said, no. Shadowcat has to have powdered blue, and Jean has to have green, and so forth. They felt that they each had their own unique color palette that they had to stick with. So it was like, okay, whatever. And we struggled a little bit with the, and plus they wanted to be able to turn them into toys.
Yeah.
So they had toy colors that they essentially were aiming for. That was the whole situation why they wanted Wolverine.
Yeah, I like the Wolverine design a lot. The initial one, the orange and black costume and the boots and stuff. It's really, it simplifies the
variations of orange on that, as I recall.
Yeah, they wanted orange, and Boyd, kind of skirted around it and turned it into sort of a burnt color, burnt orange and stuff. So it wasn't bright, shiny orange like they asked. And that, once again, one of those things where they really didn't see anything until the final episode came in. So
funny that they asked for bright orange for Wolverine.
I think it was a toy situation where they had maybe they had tons of orange color on a paint or something.
We can use this paint. We got no orange X-Men. I can see that. I found something you said early on there pretty funny, Frank. That they're just like, when we're asking like where the show started, they're like, well, Batman and X-Men, the animated series, the 2 most popular animated series ever. Don't do that. Now go.
Well, if you look at the world around at the time,
on that, talking about Batman, they did not want any night scenes in the show.
Really?
Oh,
none whatsoever, because they were afraid it was going to look like Batman.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like they were like, you worked on Batman and Gargoyles.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
prom.
Well, yeah, I feel like they're like, well, you worked on Batman and Gargoyles, so we don't want you doing any of that anymore. No more night scenes. Yeah. But it did
kind of ignored that, and we got away with it because the show was very popular. It was, Warner's #1 show at the time.
Yeah, once we started beating Pokemon, they kind of left us say, keep doing what you're doing, and we were the ones who decided you were going to do it that way.
Yeah. If anyone asks, it's all our decision.
Yes, exactly. So.
That's really funny. Well, like Frank being such a comic fan, like and having such influence from those early books, when doing storyboard work and all that, did you take a lot from them as far as like the way you would frame scenes and do things like that?
When you look at those old comic books, I mean, you get the idea of it, but I think we followed Buffy more than we did comic books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, there's only so much you can do in a comic book, and if you go back to the early X-Men comics, when they, those things are rushed out quick, and so we had strong compositions, we had dynamic poses and such, as any of the Marvel comics would do. We always try to emulate that. And try to keep it within kind of a feature telling format. But pulling scenes out and things like that, we didn't really do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I know in X-Men 97 we did that on it's like the Phoenix, the death of Phoenix and such.
Mm-hmm.
I storyboarded a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled out the John Byrne book and just went to town on it because we could. It was the characters and everything. But our shows were so different, we couldn't really go back to that because we had different characters. It wasn't the original 5 members of the team, which all had different powers and all looked differently than what they do now. So,
That's very cool.
Well, so we're just getting to the end of season 1 there. It just seems like a very purposeful, slow burn. This first season was that like very much on purpose? Because I know there's this 2-parter at the end, and I think it's gonna pop off. But it just seems like this, like really. So let's keep the stakes low.
Well, season one was they were experimenting. I think Bob Ford was the head writer of the series at that time, and Avi Arad definitely had his fingerprints on it, at least on the first show or two. And after that, they all, Avi left to go to the movies, fortunately, and we were kind of left more alone. But we still had Bob, which we're still trying to find an identity for the show. I don't think we really hit that until mid-stride in season 2. I mean, definitely we had some good episodes in season 1, but that's generally not considered the best season of X-Men Evolution. I think as you go into it, it becomes more of the X-Men type shows that everybody wanted at first, because we set a lot of things up in season 1. And in season 2, all of a sudden we're getting, whoa, there's Colossus, where there's all these different characters and all these, there's Gambit, and all these kind of things. There's a Sentinel coming in. So it was a build-up to everything, which is kind of rare, because in animation, because usually, especially back then, because everything has to be a self-contained episode.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah,
but X-Men is built for continuity, and so these, Boyd kind of they structured it in such a way that they were self-contained, but there's also a history in them. If you look at them, like you looked at them together, you could see an actual evolution of the character, costumes. The events started getting more bigger and better. And I think one of the funner things is nobody knew that there were mutants that were out there. Some people had an idea, but they didn't really, it wasn't X-Men was dominating the news feed all the time with evil mutants and such. That came later. And when it came out, it exploded, and it had a really fun impact. It was impactful to everyone that saw it, because they discovered it going public the same way that the mutants did in the stories. And so that was kind of fun.
Yeah, we were curious about that, because I was wondering about the scope of the team, because it's not played up. Like, they don't see them on the news, or they don't see, and all their fights are kind of small, like seen away from big groups of people. So we were both kind of curious about whether the world at large in the mutants existed, or if that was something that
came later. That was like season 3, I think, essentially, where it became public knowledge. I think
the big thing about this world is there were no other superheroes. Yeah. The only superhero that existed was Captain America from World War II, who disappeared.
Yeah. And we found a way to tie him into the whole Weapon X program by the super soldier thing being the precursor to the Weapon X program, which up until then, I don't believe was part of Marvel continuity.
They certainly ran with it since
it is
then.
now.
Yeah, they've certainly taken that and ran with it since then.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. It's like, you got 2 different branches of things doing the exact same thing. Why weren't they, connecting somehow? So we connected them. So
some big things came out of this show, like X-23 started in this show.
Yeah. Well, the whole Wanda being damaged, that was up until us. She was just some, maybe she was a good hero, bad girl, or whatever.
She was the damsel in distress, as she was written in the comics.
They never knew how to use her in the comics, and then we came up with the whole, she's really damaged, and that once again came out of a Buffy idea. where I don't know how familiar you guys are with Buffy, but
Oh yeah, very.
Oh yeah.
okay. At the end of one season, they showed her in an insane asylum, like it had all been her imagination. And so we thought, wouldn't it be cool if that's how we introduce Wanda in an insane asylum in a straitjacket?
Nice.
And so it kind of went from there and kind of spun from that.
And then we started looking around, and then we got the Craft.
Yeah, well,
Nice.
of course, yes, yeah.
You know, where we
Which I literally just watched that movie like 2 weeks ago. So this is very, very on point for me. So
and the idea, if anything, they toned Wanda's character down. As I remember talking about it, and it's like, let's make her so scary that her father had to put her away. Magneto had to put her away because he was afraid of her.
yeah.
And it's like people in the insane asylum, nobody wanted to go give her food because some of them never came back. That sort of thing, that sort of scare factor is what we wanted for her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If WandaVision was a horror show.
Kind of was, sort of, but
It's done with what we did even further. But I mean, I think we were the impetus to that whole thing. They combined it with the whole Vision romance and whatnot.
yeah, because then they just added to the whole, like, you know, like Marvel Comics ran with it and made her like the impetus for House of M, and then all that stuff, which kind of expanded later into all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny when you guys talk about the Buffy stuff, because like the more I think about it, the more I'm like the season where the principal was the villain the whole season until the end. You know what I mean? Like he's pulling the strings for the whole season till the end.
Right.
And like you're watching the show, and it's very similar with Mystique being the stand-in for that. You know, with obviously Magneto behind her, but it's very cool.
The fact that they're in this human school makes the show a lot different, but it seems to be the trickiest thing as far as the writing goes to work around, because it's like they have to hide their powers all the time from the students, and like when we've had that big reveal recently of Mystique being the principal, we're just like, Xavier's not going to send them to school tomorrow, is he? Like, now that he knows this, like
the first season's funny because at some point they're just like, you knew the whole time she was there, and he's like, yeah, I can't tell you why, but yeah, you know, he's
You have to run with certain cluelessness going on, and certain you can't have everyone cognizant of everything and act.
No.
I mean, the whole point was to get the characters having human friends and things, interacting with human friends and things. And so we had the one guy, you know, Scott's friend in school, which was never really paid off because, you know, the show was truncated in the later seasons because Marvel didn't want to do it anymore. So there's a lot of things,
even though it was a hit, like, well, even though once it became a hit,
because they were paying for it and they were seeing no benefit from it.
Yeah.
If they'd been able to still sell toys, they would have continued. They had a 5-season order and contract, and I think from about middle of season 2, they were begging to get out of the contract. And
then they just got out of the last season or something because there's like 4.
Kids WB said, "No, you've got a contract." You know, in fact, Marvel had agreed to sell by commercial time during the show and whatnot, and Kids WB let them out of that because they said, "Well, we don't have anything to sell." So they said, "Fine, you don't have to buy commercial time, but we still want the show." So they forced them to continue it, and about I think it was mid-season 4, they finally got tired of dealing with Marvel and having them whine about the money. And they said, fine, we'll let you out of it. You know, we'll let you out of the 5th season, or we'll even truncate the 4th season or whatever.
Wow.
But Kids WB loved the show because it was beating Pokemon at the time, which was their biggest show prior to us. So
is it like the #1 show at the time for
I believe so, yeah. I mean,
Pokemon was
never
huge.
Saturday morning, so the numbers were a lot different than you'd see now. And then those were big numbers. I mean, Pokemon was huge, and I think we came after Pokemon, and we continued building the audience after that. And but the key is Pokemon had a female audience, which usually the X-Men shows did not, or superhero show do not have a large female audience. We kept the female audience, which was big, and Kids WB recognized that, and that's why they, in season 2, thought the soap operas were what was working. So
I mean, it really is one of the first superhero cartoons that was attracting girls to watch it. So, you know, in our minds, it was very successful.
Yeah.
And you know, it always goes to me. It's always about if you make a good show, everybody will watch it. Which is contrary to a lot what Marvel. I think Ike Perlmutter didn't like it because girls don't buy.
Well, yeah, they would have issues about making female, action figures because they didn't think girls would sell to boys. Boys wouldn't buy female action figures, and that's why some of those early Toy Biz action figures of Gene are the, sought after collector items and stuff.
Well, I was a boy once, and I would definitely buy a Storm action figure.
Yeah. So I think they were pretty much out of touch in a lot of ways with their actual market.
I think so too, really. Because Star Wars sold a lot of female action figures.
Yeah.
You have to appeal to who you want to buy the things, and a lot of people didn't really understand that.
Well, I know when we talked to I think it was somebody we spoke with regarding the X-Men 97 show said they didn't really, I think it might have been one of the voice casts, so they didn't really realize how popular the show was, because at that point, no one's telling the voice cast the stats, right? I'm sure you guys would be getting some of those about like Nielsen ratings and all that, but like until they started seeing the fan mail, which was like bags and bags and bags. Were you guys getting stuff like that as well at the time? I guess we're in the email world now, but was that in there too, or
I don't know where. We in a lot of ways we didn't know what was going on. This is all pre-internet in a lot of ways, or right on the cusp. There was no, it was still in AOL world, or Prodigy.
Logging into dial-up there with the
so we
the ICQ chats
so much. At one point, Boyd and I went to a Comic-Con panel on something. We were sitting in the audience, and people recognized us, and he didn't know what the hell was going on. Because they knew we were from X-Men Evolution. He thought, why are they staring at us? I think it was like a couple of young women or something that were like, ooh, ooh, they were excited to see us in the audience and stuff. So we weren't, if they were getting fan mail and stuff, we weren't seeing it. We just got numbers from, ratings and that type of stuff. So we knew what we were doing as far as Nielsen's and such. So
it's interesting, Rogue too, because go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it wasn't until I started going to Comic-Cons and exhibiting that I realized how big Kitty was.
A favorite character of mine for sure.
Yeah. So no idea. We were making the show, we really didn't understand that.
Oh, she was the point of view character for so many young comic readers of a certain generation.
I like
we liked using her, but we didn't realize that she was that big. Big.
The dynamic between her and Nightcrawler throughout the season is very fun to watch grow. So I really.
And her and Rogue too. They're just so snappy with each other all the time. Yeah. It's pretty great. And Rogue, it's great because she doesn't have the super strength and the flight and everything.
That
so
was important to do. We didn't want to make her Superman.
Yeah, but you get to use her powers that she does have in such creative ways.
Well, yeah, because you get to see her using all these different powers all the time. She just grabs different X-Men's powers and are using them in the fight. It's very cool. Like it's definitely unique and different. You don't even really, even in modern versions, like even in the X-Men movies, you don't see her doing that. It's just, it's cool. It's very unique.
You don't have to when you're Superman, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's true. What we did with Rogue was, she hugely popular character because
her character design, kind of the gothy sort of, like it was cool.
Thank you. But in fact, right now I keep getting mail and whatever from people in Brazil. They love her. They call her.
Really?
Her. Yeah.
Brazil,
because they're I guess they run X-Men Evolution constantly there now.
Huh. Really? Oh wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Did you guys have like a closer relationship with the other directors, like on the show? You guys all in the same tight-knit group? I was just curious because Gary Graham passed away early this year, who did quite a bit of the first season.
I think that's a different Gary Graham.
Is it?
That's the Gary Graham, the actor.
Okay.
Oh, thank God. Okay. I was going to say,
it's
an odd take. I was like, how are they the same? Because the listing, when you link the one who wrote the show, it takes you to the actors.
It does.
The actors thing. So I was like, how did that transition happen from the the guy from Robot Jocks to this show. But all right, thankfully,
Gary, I believe, is still at DreamWorks right now. He
Still
left
very- yeah,
after.
been there for ever since Evolution.
Yeah,
He's been there.
all right, different Gary Graham. Yeah, for some reason they link to the same. Like when you link to it, it links to the actor that was in Star Trek and much for the show.
oh no, God no.
Yeah, that's good. That's why I was
Gary
curious.
Graham, the writer's family. We didn't mean to alarm you.
Yes, no, sorry. I just literally, because I was curious, because that guy had quite an extensive career. So I was like, when did he have the time to stop and direct episodes of X-Men Evolution? So,
Completely different guy. Gary,
Yeah.
you could not imagine being a director or being an actor.
being an actor.
Gary could never be on camera.
Okay.
He's very
Well
shy
suited
guy.
behind it, huh?
Very shy.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
I was
good.
wondering what are like the duties of an animation director on a show like this, because we never got to have Larry Houston on from the X-Men TAS show. So I'm just wondering, like, do you guys get to do like work with the voice cast, or is it mostly just the animation stuff?
Well, on this one, normally, on Batman, we were there in the recordings, but we did all that here. The recordings for Evolution were all done up in Vancouver, and so
Oh,
Boyd would
yeah.
fly up there like every week or whenever they had it
Well, he
scheduled.
stopped doing that, remember, because he was having heart issues. So
That's right. That's right.
They started doing it via phone link and stuff. So he directed everything, and Boyd pretty much handled all the acting duties, the voice acting duties via phone link.
Oh, interesting.
But it was done up in Canada, all Canadian actors.
Good stock.
Again, it was cheap.
Well, we've had
to do
Canadian
that.
voice actors on our show that'll tell you that Canada makes the best voice actors.
Yeah.
Of course.
We're,
I'm sure they will.
we may be partial. Yeah,
And if
but-
they're really good, they come down here.
yeah, they usually do.
And the whole key to what he wanted from the voice actors is he didn't want the standard overacting that you would get from a lot of Saturday morning shows.
Mhm.
He wanted them to talk like normal people.
Yeah.
And
You don't
not
want them
overact
screaming at each other like in G.I. Joe or
or X-Men.
X-Men, the animated series.
Well, we actually noticed that because we often talk, we did the whole other show and now we're doing your guys' show. So as we're going through, we're kind of, we wouldn't say we're constantly comparing it to the other one because that's not the case. They're very different shows. But, this version of Wolverine is drastically different. I wouldn't say drastically, but he's quite different than the other one in a way that he's like a more lived in, world weary, like kind of a more of a leadership role and less of a go your own way kind of guy, which we like. It's refreshing and different. It's kind of it's a little more restrained of a character, but it works for, him being in a teacher role. And it also removes the love triangle aspect with Gene and Scott too, since he's, more of a teacher than a contemporary in that world too, which is also
Yeah, that would have been awkward.
yes, that's very much so. The whole show would have a very dark, twisted turn if that became a part
But if you
of
read the
this.
first few books, the X-Men books, early, the Kirby Lee books, boy, there's some weird
There was
predatory stuff going on there.
Yeah, because Professor X kind of is in love with her at some point way early on, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like in the
Yeah,
old,
yes.
old ones. Yeah.
too early on, I might say.
The child.
Also,
She'll never
things
love-
that we made sure that happened in the voice recordings is like for Nightcrawler, we wanted to avoid that Nazi, German accent, that extreme caricatured accent. So, I had a friend, a German friend, that we had him read some of the sides for me that we then gave to the actor to work from, so he would understand what a European or what a German European accent sounded like, and that's why our Kurt sounded much more subdued than the one that they had, and we did the same sort of thing with Rogue, where we did not want that Dolly Parton Southern Belle dialect. We wanted basic white trash. It's still Southern, but it was white trash, trailer trash of sound.
Yeah, and it infects the character. It impacts the character better in that way because, like, the way she feels about herself, her family, and how she came about. Yeah, the German accent's interesting. Is like I literally just came before this from a meeting. I'm on a board of directors for a credit union, and our CEO is from Germany. But then earlier, I was doing some work last week with someone who's also from Germany. They know each other, but they're both from different parts, and their accents are wildly different. They're both German, but like one is like Bavarian German, and one is like Northern German, and they're very different. So it's just depends the part of Germany you're from. I like the fun Oktoberfest kind of Kurt that we get in the series.
He's pretty great. Him and Toad are a lot of fun.
Toad's a fun addition too.
And you know who Toad the actor for Toad was, right? He was in that series about the Irish family in Chicago or something. He was
Like a more modern show.
Oh yeah, just from maybe 5 years ago. It went on for like 10 seasons or something. The Irish family that was horrible and always getting into trouble and stuff. Big Irish family. I can't. I
not
can,
like not
Oh yeah, he
One
was.
with Cillian
Yeah,
Murphy,
no,
not that
it's no. It's Noel Fisher. He was in Shameless.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Yes, Shameless.
yeah.
Yes. No.
Yes, he
Well,
was
we had him before Shameless.
Yeah, it's way before
He's
Shameless. Good. Yeah, he's very cool. He's done Lie to Me, which was a show I really liked when it was on TV. It was what's his face? Guy played Abomination in the movies. He's in
Right. Yes. Yeah, I saw that show. Yeah, it's kind of a football show. Yeah.
No, he was Pulp Fiction, all those movies. I can't think of his name right now. But
yeah.
Speaking of Abomination, the Hulk versus Wolverine movie you directed, Frank, is amazing. I love that one. No worries.
Yes,
it's
and
related too.
It must have been sort of surreal to see somewhat of a mini live version of it pop up recently in Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a very, very, very fraction-ish.
I think that Ryan Reynolds missed an opportunity with the scene of all the Deadpools toward the end of that he didn't have an animated Deadpool.
That would have been really fun if there's one just running around that was animated.
I mean, that was the Deadpool before anyone else. I mean, outside of the comic book, it was the first animated Deadpool. Nolan North nailed the personality. I mean, he actually made the show work because of his, he improvised a lot on the lines. We just told him, just go for it, because the guy's a stand-up comedian. I look at, every time I see Ryan Reynolds, I keep thinking of Nolan North because he's doing it so well. But yeah,
you should have had him.
We did those shows. We were told, this was a chance to do Wolverine, as you're never going to see Wolverine because you're never going to see him cutting people up and stuff like that, and like you do in the comic book. So they kind of in the movies, that's kind of what we did. We had an opportunity to do more of a theatrical thing with it, and Boyd actually helped set that whole thing up.
Oh, really?
The MLG movies, animated movies.
Yeah, the Ultimate Avengers he was spearheading that with Kyle.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Those were really good releases. The Doctor Strange one was really good too.
The Thor one was fun. They're all great.
Yeah.
And the Iron Man one.
Yeah.
All the shows that Marvel didn't sell to Fox or to Sony. It was all the leftover characters, and that's what it was about, is to introduce those characters to modern audiences.
Yeah, now it's all back under the Marvel umbrella, except for I guess Spider-Man fully. But we keep getting these Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies that keep coming out.
And they didn't even Hulk. They can't really do Hulk as a movie by itself anymore.
Yeah, I read that too. Yeah. You can only be in other movies or other
Same thing with Namor. Universal owns those two characters.
Which is probably a good idea. At this point, maybe a standalone Hulk movie doesn't work.
Yeah, they kind of messed up.
Well, they just keep doing the elements of it in other movies, like World War Hulk and Thor Ragnarok, and we got this Doomsday thing coming where it's this all parallel universe stuff. So we'll probably get like Maestro and some of those versions in there too.
That'd be cool. I did read recently, it might just be internet gossip, but I don't know about that. They just cleared that up recently, and now they can make a Hulk movie. I don't know if that's true. But I did
Could be. I mean, money talks.
Yeah. Well, it just seems like it just seems like the thing to do now is if you just buy the company that has the rights to the thing you want. Like that's what it seems
won't sell
like.
Us Hulk? Well,
yeah, we'll just buy the company.
Yeah, really though. Do either of you guys have a favorite X-Men character?
That's right.
Oh, geez. I always loved drawing Rogue. Rogue was fun. I mean, they're all great characters, but Rogue was always the fun one to draw. Outside of that, yeah, I mean, Wolverine was. I did a lot of Wolverine episodes, so obviously Wolverine too. But I like drawing girls. What can I say?
If I'm asked to draw something quickly, do a little quick sketch on someone's book or something like that, I'll do Wolverine because that's easiest, of course. But as far as a character, and I think
Batman kissing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it could be Batman. Yeah. Yes, and if I need to draw a Batman, I just change out the cowl a little bit to make it Batman. But as a character from X-Men Evolution, the character I thought worked interestingly and could have gone even further was Boom Boom.
Yeah,
I thought she had an interesting backstory, and the fact that she obviously had no compulsion about whether she was going to stay good or bad or whatever. She just did what felt right and stuff. And she came from a weird upbringing and stuff. I thought that could have been an even further interesting character.
They're kind of. I just thought that's pretty much the Himiko Toga character from My Hero Academia is kind of the same thing. I'll do what I want, and I'll live as I want, and I won't be burdened by what people expect of me. As sort of was her attitude. Yeah,
and I had the feeling that she was very fluid in other ways too.
Yeah. That's the fun part about talking to you guys, like people like yourselves that do animation, the writers, the directors, because there's all this stuff that like doesn't necessarily fit into canon that you're going to see in the description of the character, but which you guys infer in the characters in the way it's designed. So to say like Boom Boom is, fluidly in whatever way that she falls that way, like that's something that infects the way you guys represent her. But like it's not something that's overtly said she's this.
Yeah,
right.
So, obviously, because it was a kid's show, we couldn't say these things. The fact that we were able to show Mystique and her wife having raised Rogue anyway, and still did it. Yeah, Destiny, and got away with it as much as we did. And once again, I think that had more to do with, once again, the storyboards. They weren't able to go through the storyboards and see that.
We didn't make it a big issue or advertise it. It was a natural flow of the story of the characters. And that's why, they always played so well.
Yeah. Because you could read that into it if you were of the mind to read into it. Yeah. Like if somebody didn't care or didn't
just saying that, like it was just natural. Yeah. Nobody cared.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. I like, for example, Kurt. And this is because I kind of felt like Kurt was very much like one of my sons who's gay. I always had the feeling that Kurt was gay, even though he was still hitting on girls and everything else. I mean, and so at one point, when we decided to use Amanda as his girlfriend in, I think it was season 2, the joke around was a man, duh.
Well, that was fun too, because like with season 2, you guys get to bring in all of the New Mutant characters.
Yes.
And to add those to the mix, which is always it must have been fun to be able to kind of really open up, because like on the other show, you'd get them in one episode and that's about it. But it's fun that you can kind of like really open up the world and take all of the pieces in the sandbox and play.
And a lot of them wound up being more than background character. I mean, Bobby Iceman, definitely, he had his episodes that shined. When we did the original 5 episode,
it was a fun homage.
Spider thing. We had the episode where we had the original X-Men all together: Angel, Iceman, Beast, Cyclops, and Jean. It was a blast. And fans of the comic book love that kind of stuff as it comes together. But it took us a long time to get there because we had to introduce all the characters. And once we had the New Mutants, again, if we had gone longer, there's a lot more we could have done. I mean, magic.
I,
I would love to have seen magic in the show.
I assume we'd have introduced Emma at some point. You know,
And we did have Gambit do just a touch.
Yeah.
Because Rogue is still kind of young.
Yes, right. Well, is that like? Do you guys find? How do you feel about? I know, like when you're creating characters for an entity like Disney, the world takes them and goes off with them and runs away, and you can't do anything about them once they don't belong to you. But to see like X-23 become what she's become beyond it, like similar to like Harley Quinn in the Batman series, which you worked on, Frank, as well, like and Steven. So like to see those characters kind of go and just become huge parts of the world and of the extra world around it. Like, what do you feel like you have some ownership over it, or are you just happy to see it still going, or do you disappointed with how it's represented, or is there a disconnect there?
It's kind of great to feel like we had something to do with it. I mean, obviously Craig was the creator of X-23, Craig Kyle, but because I was the first one to design it, I felt like I've got I'm related a little bit in there, maybe kind of a godfather or
uncle
or cousin, I don't know. But so it's great to see how well a character like that can take off and stuff. So, and to be honest, we never thought that would ever happen. We didn't see her as that type of character.
Well, it's funny that like she did, but Spike didn't really become a character in the Marvel universe. You know what I mean? Like yet, anyway. Yet.
But you don't know how many people I come across that love Spike.
Yeah, it's a great character.
Yeah, I think if Marvel had thought about it, they could have turned him into another big franchise character. I think he could have gone somewhere.
I'm sure a day's going to come.
Unnamed character in one of the X-Men Fox movies.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. No, I think they actually call him Spike, except they spell it with an I think.
Yeah, I think you're
right. But like the generation that grew up watching your show, like they're the ones that are going to be making the comics soon, if not now. I guess probably now, some of them. Yeah. So it's like I'm sure there's going to be a writer someday that has such a love for the show that's going to bring it. I'm sure Marvel. Like, what would Marvel have to say no to? So I'm sure the day will come. We'll see it, but not yet.
Well, before we let you guys go here, there is definitely one thing I like to ask everybody, which is if you could have any superpower in the world, in the real world, which one would you choose?
Want to answer, Frank? Think about it.
Steven needs some time.
Yeah. All right.
No, you can't think of anything.
You guys have all the superpowers you need. That's right. Well, you guys met up again on Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. You guys both directed on that show as well. Yeah. That's
Frank
the best Avengers show. That's a great show.
So that was a fun show too. That was a good gig until it kind of went south.
Until Disney bought it.
Yeah.
Like honestly, when I know
Disney
you
bought it and they changed their ID, we lost our headquarters.
For some of the episodes that they altered were like, oh no, God, that was a great episode before you decided to gut it.
It was. It was great, but it was also disappointing because we knew what it was going to be. So.
That's honestly because I'm such a big fan of. I was a huge fan of the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. Like I think that was, in my opinion, the best. And I love the '90s one, but one of the best representations of Spider-Man in the animated series up to that point. It was the best for me, and I was so disappointed when Marvel bought it and then just went away because like it was a WB property. But it's got to be frustrating when you know where it's going to go and the worlds you're opening up, and then just to have it chopped off because it's something you have nothing to do with.
Well, that leads to Spectacularly Chill. Here's watching. Since they reference, you guys are talking about TV guidelines and stuff. I wonder some of the episodes in the show would have been different if there weren't a lot of restrictions. And I might add to that, or like, did you guys send some out that were like particularly gutted, like you were just saying about the Avengers there?
Yeah, I know there's the one around 9/11 that we had that had to be altered. Where, I think, wasn't it one of your episodes, Frank, where something hit a couple buildings?
the trade towers coming down.
Yeah.
We had something dealing well with explosions in general. Everybody became very paranoid about anything. We if we blow up the mansion, if we do any kind of blow up things, the network was very touchy, very let's avoid that sort of thing. I'm trying to remember the story that was affected by it most, because I remember Boyd having an argument with the network person on that.
I don't remember offhand. I just know that it altered that climax or something, and you had to find another solution. But I don't know that we found ourselves in a situation where we had to alter too much.
I mean,
I knew going in it was a kid's show.
I mean, I remember the first episode when it came out that Avi had some notes that were a little odd.
His notes
the whole thing starts off with this dream sequence. Kitty's a dream sequence from Kitty, and in the sequence, she's kind of flying.
Mm-hmm.
It's that wonderful flying feel, and all of a sudden, something happens, and she starts to fall. Then she wakes up and she finds that she's phased through her roof. So
that was a great scene.
Onto the floor. Yeah, she's in between stuff. And we had to cut the flying sequence out. So it's like she just kind of fell out of bed as opposed to the flying, because he was like, oh, well, Kitty doesn't fly. He says, well, we actually, she kind of walks on air, later
she
on.
Does do that.
She's doing this thing that he didn't really understand the characters at the time, but so he made us cut it out, and it was this very jarring thing, and we were like, oh geez, okay, well, fine. But after that, he left us alone.
Just make Kitty fly, and I'm fine with everything.
Rick Unger, who's the executive producer, pretty much let Boyd do whatever he wanted to a large degree, and other than occasionally he would say, hey, I want you to put my friend in the episode, or things like that.
Oh, really?
You always kind of get a few of those.
Yeah.
We've been trying to get a comic friend of ours to draw us in comic books for a couple years now. It's just not.
Yet to do it, Dave.
When I was illustrating a bunch of those DC books for HarperCollins, the two art editors that kept asking to be put in, and so they were put in almost every book, whether it was me or someone else, and regardless of what the franchise was, and to the point where Scott, the writer for Batman, Scott
Snyder.
Yeah, he was showing them to his kids, and he discovered these, and he called them. Oh God, what were they? I can't remember the term he was using, but he wrote an article about them finding all these characters, wondering what the hell is going on with these characters that kept showing up in these books and stuff. So it was kind of amusing for a while.
He's a fantastic
like 10,
writer.
15 years ago or something that he found this. And because from what I understand, is he couldn't show his kids his books. So he was reading them these HarperCollins books and stuff when they were young and stuff. So
that's cute. Very cool.
Get anything else for these fine gentlemen there, Andre?
No, I think they covered it. I always assumed Avi Arad was a weird dude, so it's nice to have that confirmed.
Confirmed.
Yeah, well, I mean, just based on all of those projects that he produced, like all the early Marvel stuff before we got to the MCU as we know it now. Some strange stuff in there, and you never watch interviews with him, like in special features. You're always like, this guy seems off, really out to lunch. So that's interesting. Very cool.
Better hurry up there. Spectacularly chill. Spectacularly chill.
Another question. Okay.
Another
question. Let these gentlemen get back to their lives.
Yeah.
Steve's got some editing.
We're really enjoying the show, and we're looking forward to it because people keep telling us. I watched it when it came out, but again, I was at that age where sometime in season 2, I just stopped watching cartoons for a while. I don't know. I was not.
Was cool,
yeah, I guess. So cool of me. And then you reach that age where you realize actually cartoons are really cool. Yeah, it's a nice place to be. Oh, here we go. So what has he got here? With what was able to come out for the show, would things come out different if it was done on another network, like Cartoon Network, for example? Oh, that's interesting.
Well, we probably would have had cops with bullets.
It probably wouldn't have been a kid's show like the way they wanted on.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, though, I'm not. I mean, I know that was the premise that it was a kids show, but we didn't really deal with it as a kids show per se. You know, obviously there's no overt sex going on or anything like that, and the romance was pretty. But they were high school kids. You're not going to go that far with it anyway.
It's not Euphoria.
Yeah. No, not even Buffy on that level.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But still,
No.
and we may have gone further with that. We may have had, you know, Wolverine actually kill a few things other than robots and whatnot. But you know, I'm not sure we would have gone too much further because basically what we created, I think, was pretty solid overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and TAS Wolverine only fought robots and people who could catch him by the wrists.
Yeah.
Before the claws
Not
got
like
anywhere.
lacing going on.
Yeah.
Well,
But people keep telling us that to look forward to it because me and Andre haven't gotten to the end of this series before, and people keep telling us how great it gets, so we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's because of your guys' wonderful work. So thank you so much. And thanks for being on the show. Much appreciated.
No problem. My pleasure.
Awesome.
Right.
Good to be here.
Catch you next time, everybody.
Bye bye.